The Jake Browning era began in a loss on Sunday here at Paycor Stadium as the Steelers escape with a 16-10 victory over the Bengals. Hi again, everyone. I'm James Erpine alongside Elise Jesse. Welcome into Cincinnati Bengals Talk, where the Bengals had the lead at halftime. The game sort of went exactly how everybody thought it would go.
Yeah.
And really the difference, well, there's a few plays, but certainly the interception, I think, on the Bengals' first possession of the third quarter. They never really recovered. The Bengals had a chance to take a potential two-score lead. They were up 7-3, had the ball at the 18-yard line, and the Steelers took the lead and never gave it up a few minutes later.
And I think that changed the momentum drastically, I think, like you said. And I think another thing that really changed the game today was the Bengals' inability to run the ball. How much have we talked about this throughout the game? We've talked about it all year. We talked about it ad nauseum with the players after the game ended. They're just not getting the production that they need out of the run game. I mean, and you had some quote about it. What did you say? The scheme can't survive. You say it. I don't know what it is.
We were talking about the scheme and the personnel isn't good enough to survive the scheme. The scheme clearly needs work, and I see your criticism, by the way, of Frank Pollock and the coaches and the offense. The players aren't talented enough. Joe Mixon and the offensive line, they're not talented enough to overcome this scheme. And on the flip side, the scheme isn't good enough to put these guys in position to be successful as a rushing offense. The players aren't good enough to overcome the scheme, or the personnel, I said. That's nicer. The personnel can't overcome the scheme, and the scheme can't overcome the personnel. And you're right. 8 carries for Joe Mixon, 16 yards. He did have the big 39-yard catch and run at the end of the game. But that's it. That's your running back numbers. All that Chase Brown talk. I did a video talking about how Chase Brown was going to be involved potentially, and he got activated yesterday, and all signs point to it. And he's healthy, by the way. This was not anything to do with his hamstring. Yeah. Zach brushed it off at the end there, but whether it's Chase Brown, whether it's Joe Mixon, whether it's someone, if I would have told you the Bengals only have 8, they're running backs because Browning had 3 rushing attempts.
Yeah.
They have 8 rushing plays. That's unbelievable, and yet here we are. And they were in the game. It's not like they were blown out and they had to throw it the whole time. They had the lead at halftime.
See, I think that the offensive line is good enough, and I think Joe Mixon, we've seen a lot of production from him in years past. I know that I'm kind of like the stand person for Joe Mixon sometimes, but I do think that he is talented enough to bust open those runs. But, I mean, only having 8 rushes in a game, I mean, that is just it's maddening, because when you're going up against any team in the AFC North, you have to be run heavy. You have to make the defense respect your offense, make sure that you can set up the pass with the run, and they are just not doing it. It's like they forget about the fact that they have a full running back room in their arsenal. They're not utilizing it properly, in my opinion.
And so I do agree. I think they can get more out of the current run game, to be clear. But, like, big picture, they haven't been a good running team all year.
You're right.
Now today, again, 8 carries. That's unbelievable.
What's the point?
I'm shocked at that, and that's part of it. Where outside of, and by the way, their touchdown drive. Now that I think about it, their touchdown drive was 4 plays. So, and it was the big play to Chase on the sideline right here, on the tip play, and then obviously the touchdown pass to Sample. So it's not like that was a long extended drive either. So, yeah, I think they're going to have to run the ball and figure it out somehow. And whether it's tweaks to the scheme and getting more under center, whether it's getting Chase Brown more involved, whether it's finding a way, because I think getting under center helps Mixon. Yeah. I think it helps put him in a position to succeed. And that's where I talk about that. And just to be clear with the players part, I could totally see people twisting this.
I know.
Jamar Chase is the type that could be plug and play in any scheme, to be clear. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying the offensive line is awful, because they weren't, and I thought they were solid today. Jake Browning sacked 4 times. Mm-hmm. A lot of those sacks were on Jake Browning, I thought. There was one free runner where Jonah Williams and Drew Sample had a miscommunication, but overall I think that's the other side of this. It's run game. And then from Jake Browning's perspective, the numbers are good. Mm-hmm. 19 of 26, you would take that. The 1 interception really hurts. But I think we kind of knew or expected this at best. It's not like he was 10 of 30. Yeah. He performed well-ish for what my expectations were for him. But expectations weren't super high in his first NFL start either.
No, I don't think they were super high. Luckily, Jamar Chase was active today because he was the most exciting thing about this football game, in my opinion. But, I mean, when you talk about Jake Browning, Tier 2, JB, starting for the Cincinnati Bengals, you do expect them to have more of a plan for the running game, and it fell through. There was nothing to be desired about the run game today, and I thought that when you would have had a backup quarterback coming in, that you would have helped him a lot with the running game, and that really just didn't happen. I seriously thought they were going to run the ball so much more today, and I think that's the biggest glaring issue of this offense right now.
And then defensively, well, the Steelers hadn't had 400 yards of total offense since the COVID era, week 2 of 2020. Yeah, this was the 59th game. It was a 58-game streak, and it was snapped today because Kenny Pickett, boy, threw all over. The Bengals had huge explosive plays in the first half alone, a 39-yard gain, a 29-yard gain, a 24-yard gain, all through the air. So it wasn't just like the Steelers were running the ball through the Bengals. He threw for 278 yards in this defense. They only give up 16 points, but the yards, and I've been really pushing this over the past couple of weeks, especially now that it is Jake Browning. You can't give up that kind of yardage because you're going to be exhausted by the end of the game. It's not going to be sustainable. And so you take the 16 points. That part I totally agree with. Only forced the one turnover, and it was very opportune because it took points off the board for the Steelers. But they didn't force more than one turnover, and they gave up a ton of yards. Those are things that Lou Anarumo is going to hate to discuss this week for sure.
I know that Lou, what is his saying? Yards, not points, or
Yes.
Points, not yards. Now, I am impressed the defense was out there for, 68 plays, I believe, and only gave up 16 points. But Mike Tomlin is so good at exposing offenses, especially defensively. Like, he is so good at picking apart an offense and making them look like they haven't played together all year. Mike Tomlin knew exactly what to expose for the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and that is throw right down the middle to our tight end. That's exactly what they did. Yeah. Pat, how many yards?
Pratt Freiermuth.
Yeah, he had 120 yards. That's his first time eclipsing 100 yards in his career, I believe. Tomlin knew exactly what to do, and they did it, and they were successful at that. And I think that is a glaring issue that Lou Anarumo needs to figure out going forward, especially on Monday night against the Jaguars.
Bengals do play Monday night. They have a chance to get back to 500. A last takeaway from me, and you obviously talked to a bunch of guys in the locker room. We have our locker room interviews up from Jamar Chase to Orlando Brown Jr., Ted Karras. There's a bunch of them up. Obviously, we have Jake Browning and Zach Taylor as well right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. But I think a bit of reality set in that it isn't going to be all right. Jake is here. We're going to keep it rolling. Like, there are obvious flaws and issues. I don't think anyone thought that the Steelers were world beaters out there. I think those guys are like, man, we shouldn't have lost to those guys, and yet we did. And so it's a bit of a reality check here for the Bengals as they try to regroup after losing 3 straight games.
Yeah, I think they're all searching for answers, and they all have. I got the sense that they have a sense of urgency to start winning again and figure out a way to play together with this current roster and be successful moving forward. I think this locker room is not used to dealing with losing streaks like this and dealing with so many losses. A lot of these players come from high-performing universities, high-performing high schools. A lot of them were stars at both places, and they're just not used to dealing with as much losing as they have been this season.
Yeah, Jamar Chase was certainly, just watch his interview. It didn't look like normal Jamar because Jamar is not used to losing. Again, the final here, 16-10. The Bengals fall to 5-6 on the season. They've lost 3 straight. Make sure you check out everything that Elise Jesse has on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Plenty of interviews from the locker room. Obviously, we'll have you covered as well on Monday Night Football next week and leading up to it right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. So, for Elise Jesse, I'm James Rapine signing off for now. Thank you so much for watching CBT.